Today, we're continuing to explore why journaling before you eat is so important. Last time, we talked about an important concept: cue, routine, reward. I'll give a quick refresher and then we'll dive into the next concept, which is really important, called pausing. So, just to recap the cue, routine, reward, there were dogs that got a bell. The dogs had their routine of eating, and then they were rewarded by feeling full. Now, journaling when you are eating, it's going to help you understand your cue, it's going to help you understand your routine, and sometimes, of course, you'll journal after you eat. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to journal every time beforehand. Sometimes you're going to journal afterwards. It happens. And then you can think about what food is rewarding you. In addition to a full feeling or, any sort of physical sensation that diminishes anxiety, diminishes stress, helps you calm down. Those are rewards, right? When your brain starts to turn off, those are rewards. And sometimes you can start to notice those rewards, those routines, and those cues when you're journaling. Okay, so that's the recap. You're studying your habits. You're studying your habits. You're bringing a heightened level of awareness. You're increasing your awareness before, during, and after where you eat. Now, today's lesson about pausing builds on top of the other lesson, because when you journal right before you eat, what you are doing is you are taking a different route. Normally you have some sort of cue, right? For the dogs, it was the bell. Humans are a little bit more complicated. Our cues can be emotions, thoughts, feelings, etc., places, people, worries about the future. We can have many different cues. Now, normally, a cue happens, boom, automatic behavior. It goes without even thinking. You're just eating. You might even suddenly realize, oh, I'm eating and I didn't even choose to eat. I'm just eating. Well, with the journaling before you eat, you are going to be taking a different path. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes those food cravings in the beginning might be so tough that you end up going back to eating. That's fine. That's fine. But look, you still went a different route, right? And in terms of your brain, and we'll talk about the brain in an upcoming video, you're starting to wire your brain differently. And how you're wiring your brain differently is this little direction. This new direction is the pause, where you can decide what you want to do. You might not be perfect. You might not always make the decision, but every time you journal before you eat, you're pausing. Just by scribbling, just by taking out the journal or taking out your app and writing, you're taking a different course of action, and you're strengthening those muscles in your brain, the neural pathways in your brain. You're strengthening those neural pathways. And guess what? In due time, when you start to see that journaling feels better, it works out better, you're going to start to form a different reward pathway. Now, let's talk about pausing. Normally, there's a stimulus, and then there's an automatic reaction, but pausing is where you can begin to be mindful. Now, we'll talk about mindfulness later on, but basically, it's where you get that heightened awareness. You can say enlightenment, eating enlightenment, is heightened awareness. Now, you're building awareness around your cue, right? And by pausing, you're going to be able to start to become more aware of a lot of different cues, a lot of different thoughts, emotions, etc., that you're having. Now, in due time, pretty soon, you're going to have a record of thoughts, anxiety, feelings, places, times, etc., of when you are eating. And some of those times when you're eating, you're going to write down, wow, I really want to overeat, or even if you do binge, I did overeat, right? You're going to have a record of your psychology around food. And the pause, therefore, is when you are starting to make those records, right? The pause is when you are writing. The pause is when you are writing. You're writing down, I'm feeling anxious. Write down, I'm feeling like there's not enough food. I'm thinking there's not enough food. It's this time, it's this place. By writing, you're pausing. By pausing, you're bringing awareness. You're increasing your awareness. By writing, you're starting to get a record. And they say, what gets recorded gets managed, and what gets managed gets improved, right? So you're going to start seeing patterns. You're going to start seeing your cues. You're going to be able to predict ahead of time when a cue is going to trigger you. This type of precognition, this prescience ability, when you can foresee the future, you say, oh, wow, I always get anxious. And every time I get anxious, I get those food cravings. So I'm going to work and this person's going to make me anxious. So, you start to see ahead of time what's going to unfold. And then this in turn leads to more pausing, more presence, more mindfulness. It's just a virtuous cycle, right? So writing, you study your cues, you pause, and then that knowledge starts to accumulate and you start to be able to predict. You start to be able to foresee the future. Those cues are going to be more and more known to you, more and more familiar over time as you practice journaling. And then that will help you shift your behaviors in the long run. So we'll talk about brain stuff another time. We'll talk about mindfulness. This is all coming, but it's really, really important. Just to really sink into, this practice, this discipline, this gentle discipline of journaling or writing down on a pen or in your app, wherever, right before you eat. Not done in a perfectionistic way. Sometimes you're only going to be able to manage to scribble, but really harnessing, training your mind, training your body to, instead of going this way automatically, to just take a little bit different course of action. And that's really important. So let's wrap up this video and more to come.